Hello and welcome to Just One More Watch, and welcome today to my long overdue first encounter with the brand Mathey-Tissot. I have been asked dozens of times for my opinion on Mathey-Tissot, and I'll be honest, despite never having handled one or researched the brand, my opinion wasn't all that favourable. Looking at some of their range on JOMASHOP though, one could be forgiven for thinking that they were little more than a cynically named homage brand. If indeed that was one's opinion. But now, thanks to a Queensland subscriber called Morne, my opinion has changed. A little bit at least. Thank you, Morne. He got in touch back in January, told me that he had one of these coming in. Would I be interested in having a look at it? And I said, yes, please. It's their top of the range special edition Type 20 chronograph. A style of watch very much synonymous with Breguet. But did you know that back in the 1950s, Mathey-Tissot used to make Type 20s for Breguet? Nope. Me neither. Did you know that Mathey-Tissot had supplied watches to the US Army and the British Royal Air Force? Nope. Me neither. Did you know that Mathey-Tissot are now owned by their CEO who has worked for the company for nearly 20 years? Nope. Me neither. We clearly have a lot to learn then. Let's flip the camera and get on with it. Okay, before I get into this nice wooden box and without going full TGV on you, it is worth a brief minute on the history of the Type 20. And that history goes back to 1954 when the French government commissioned a specific watch for their Air Force with a specific set of specifications. It had to be a flyback chronograph between 37 and 39 mil in diameter that was reliable enough to function at least 300 times and accurate enough to fall within plus or minus 8 seconds per day and have enough power reserve to last for at least 35 hours. Now, much like the German Fliegers of World War II, a number of companies were commissioned to make watches in this Type 20 style for the French military, the most famous of which was of course Breguet, but the most important of which, today anyway, was Mathey-Tissot. 50s and 60s originals are highly sought after by collectors and command correspondingly high prices, but there are no shortage of modern day homages for those wanting the look without the price tag. This specific watch is interesting because it has a direct lineage back to the 1950s, but can be bought for much less than the price of a Breguet. How much less? Well, Mathey-Tissot themselves quote 3,600 Swiss francs as the RRP on this special edition. That's close to $4,000 US at the current exchange rate. Cheaper, but still not cheap. Enter our friends at JOMASHOP. They currently have this one on sale for a much more reasonable 1,400 USD. That's where Morne got his. Don't worry though, if that's still a bit of a stretch, there are plenty of other very similar looking Mathey-Tissots from as little as $300 US. I'll leave a couple of links in the description. But I'm sure they don't come in a nice big wooden box like this one did. The etching of the historical airman on the front of the box lets you know exactly what you're in for even before you've opened it. Now this is a special edition, as such it comes with a couple of different straps, a two-piece distressed leather and a bund. Now the bund is unworn. I'm not going to try it on because it's brand new and I don't want to break it in, so to speak. And there is a classic Type 20 big eye chronograph, so called because the register at 3, the 30-minute chrono timer, is larger than the register at 9. The watch therefore has one big eye. This one doesn't have any fotina on the hands and the indices, it's all just white on black therefore, but it does have period correct sizing. That being 38.5 mil in diameter, 14.7 mil thick, lug to lug of 44.6, but a slightly annoying lug width of 19 mil. Weight as supplied on the two-piece is 83 grams. Now crystal is sapphire coated mineral and water resistance is unspecified, either on the JOMASHOP website or the Mathey-Tissot website. That'll be 30 meters then, I reckon. The movement is a Sellita SW510BHB. Clearly, we're not going to be spending too long at the caseback, are we? Fairly simple, stainless steel screw-on, just featuring the words Type 20 and Swiss made. Behind the caseback though is that aforementioned Sellita. According to their own website, it features 27 joules, a 4 Hz beat rate and 48 hours of running time when fully wound. The case itself though is finished rather pleasantly. It's a fine brush to the sides of the case and the upper lug surface, but there is a little high polish chamfer on the lugs themselves. The bezel is small but offers plenty of grip. The crown is large but offers plenty of grip. The Mathey-Tissot symbol on the crown looks for all the world like a CND symbol, but obviously Mathey-Tissot, with their origins in the 1880s, predates nuclear weapons and the campaign to rid the world of them by some decades. The supplied leather strap is this distress style cross-stitched, nice and thick, stamped with the brand name and logo on the underside, genuine leather of course, but not quick release. 2 retainers, 1 fixed, 1 mobile, and a nice buckle and tang with the brand name etched into it. The island hands are rather prescriptive. It definitely looks like a Type 20, which is precisely the point. Everything is just printed on in white as noted. Arabics 1 through 12, but with the 2 and 4 clipped to make way for the big I, and 3 and 9 missing entirely because of the 2 registers. Those 2 registers are recessed, the 30-minute chrono at the 3 featuring concentric circles and a leaf hand, the small second indicator at 9, and just to complete the set, the hour and minute hand are batons with syringe tips. The white is nicely legible against the black, plus there is some loom here, which I'll show you a bit later on. Branding is kept to a minimum in a nod to the originals, which often didn't feature any branding at all. The bi-directional friction bezel is very small but still features a triangle at the 12, paint-filled circular indents at the half hours and small Arabics on each hour. It's a great look overall when combined with the dome crystal. Now, I personally like Fotina, but it's actually quite refreshing to see this one in white on black, just as it would have been in the 1950s. And on wrist it wears pretty sweetly. I like this style of slightly smaller retro chronograph, at least in part because they are so wearable. Small enough for people with 6-inch wrists, but chunky enough for people with 8-inch wrists because they are well over 14mm thick. The lug width is an odd choice, but does at least help keep the proportions spot on, I suppose. The distressed leather strap is comfortable and has sealed sides to it, so it should be able to take the odd splash without falling apart. Legibility is also pretty decent because of the white on black colour scheme. And there's the pocket shot to finish. I opted for some drab military green myself today, I think entirely appropriate given the watch's backstory. High and tight, low and loose, it doesn't really matter with this one because it's compact and weighs under 90 grams. Alright, moans and niggles. Was I wrong about Mathey-Tissot then? Now that I'm informed of their backstory and I've had a good look at one of their watches, has my opinion changed? Well, yes and also no. It's nice to have read a bit more about the brand and to now realise that there is, or at least was, far more to them than the endless Rolex homages suggested. But leaving their backstory to one side, I still have a few complaints about this one as a $1,400 watch. First, well, like most Type 20s, this is the chronograph you buy when you don't actually want to use a chronograph. The sub-register at 3 is the 30-minute chrono timer, but have a look at the markings. It's divided into fifths and then further into 15ths, so each of the small printed batons represents 2 minutes, and the large ones are actually at the 6, 12, 18, 24 and 30. I mean, you can still use it, but you have to be very careful and retrain your brain around the dial. That's the problem of the design though, and not necessarily one of the manufacturer. I appreciate. And the bezel action on this is loose. You may have noticed that in a lot of the shots it isn't quite pointing at 12. I tried my best, but a strong gust of wind moves it in one direction or the other, quite frankly. It's not the first watch that I've had this problem with. At least with Vostoks though, you pop the bezel off, tighten the spring clip and fix the problem. I wouldn't fancy doing that with this one. It's a fine line between patina and mange, and that strap is already right on the line, and this watch is only a couple of months old. I've got a couple of these distressed leather straps myself. I do like the style, but yeah, they can look quite done quite quickly. And the loom is not the best, to be honest. It's a printed dial retro pilot's watch, so I'm not expecting too much, but even then it's a bit of a disappointment how quickly the hands fade, leaving the indices glowing somewhat hopelessly on their own. And here is the loom in context, head to head with the $140 Baltony military chronograph, a watch costing 10% of the price of the Mathey-Tissot. And there's only one winner here, isn't there? And you knew this was coming, didn't you? Mineral crystal. Why? The originals had acrylic, most modern homages have sapphire. Why does this one only have sapphire coated mineral? JOMASHOP needs to look at their listing because their listing advertises sapphire crystal. The Mathey-Tissot website reveals that it is only sapphire coated mineral crystal. I tested it with my crystal tester and it is indeed only mineral crystal. Even at the price that Morne paid, that's hard to justify, and at the 3,600 Swiss franc RRP, it is surely impossible to justify. So, a faithful Type 20 retro reissue by one of the companies charged with making them in the 1950s and featuring a high quality Swiss-made mechanical movement, but all for a fraction of the price of a Breguet. It's not without its appeals then. However, in some ways it represents the top step of a not particularly well regarded ladder of watches by the contemporary brand that is Mathey-Tissot. And within that brand there are many similar looking watches but for much less money, so you don't really have to spend $1,400 US to get the heritage side of the deal, if you see what I mean. Now, I bought a 1950s reissue manual wind bicompact chronograph myself last year, but I chose the Hamilton American Classic Intramatic. I admit it doesn't have the backstory of the Mathey-Tissot and it doesn't have that classic big eye look, but it's from a brand whose current output is much better regarded. It features a proper piece of sapphire, decent lume, 100 meters of water resistance, and it's basically the same price as the Mathey-Tissot. I guess Morne and I each made our respective choices. I'm sure he is as happy with his choice as I am with mine, assuming he knew it was only sapphire coated mineral crystal, that is. So there you have it. Thank you, Morne, for opening my eyes to Mathey-Tissot. I think I can be forgiven though for regarding them as a homage brand with a dubious name, but a bit of digging reveals there's more to them than that, and it reveals this Type 20 homage as being one of the most affordable ways to get an authentic, modern, Swiss-made Type 20 mechanical watch on your wrist. It'll be really interesting to see what the new CEO does with the brand over the next decade. More of this, or more of this? While you're here, you really should have a look at my Hamilton Intramatic review, or the only other Type 20 that I have looked at by Mercure. Thanks for watching. I'll see you again in a future video, I hope.